Might be an unpopular opinion, but I think that founders need to stop relying on their accountants to tell them what their business is doing. Uh, I say this because at the end of the day, the buck stops with the founder. They're the director of the business. They're the ones ultimately making those decisions, and they're the ones that have to wear the responsibility of those decisions. Um, it's about taking ownership of all of the different areas of the business. And I realize that my role as a fractional or virtual CFO is to help bridge that gap between people's understanding of balance sheet and P&L and what the hell's going on in the business with their knowledge of their craft or their product or what they're offering the world. But too often I see people relying too much on their accountant and just outsourcing, even thinking about it. And I think that's a really dangerous place to be, especially as you start growing. So I'd love to encourage you to take real ownership over understanding this. I realize a lot of people find accounting is boring, but you can still learn a base layer of what's going on in your business. And I want to show you why this has real world implications for you as a founder. So the first thing that I wanted to share was this link to the ASIC website, and I'll drop this in the video below. This concept of trading whilst insolvent is really, really important. The reason you need to understand your numbers and how it has real world implications is that in certain situations, you can be deemed personally liable for the debts of your company if you were trading whilst insolvent. And I won't go into the exact details of how they define that. I'll post this link so you can actually think about it. But essentially, if you can't pay all your debts and you can't pay all your suppliers, they're chasing you for money and you don't have any, that's a great indicator that perhaps you're trading whilst insolvent. You don't have enough assets to meet your liabilities. And the key point here is you need to understand what's happening in your business in order to know when that point comes and that you're taking on a huge amount of additional risk maybe you weren't aware of, because you can be personally liable. I think a lot of people start a proprietary limited company here in Australia because we think it protects us. It gives us a little bit of a boundary. They can't come after us, protects the family home. There's certain situations where you can still be pursued for those debts, and you need to be really aware of that and when you're getting into that position. So depending on the situation, you can be deemed liable and they can come after you. One really key one that the ATO is really, really strong and strict on, and I think it's a little bit further down here, paying the pay-as-you-go withholding and the superannuation for your staff. So obviously you need to, here it is, liability for company tax debt. If you haven't paid your staff's pay-as-you-go withholding or their superannuation, the ATO can come after you personally for that as well. That's a really, really critical one to remember, especially if you're a growing company and your payroll's growing and each of those payments each month or fortnight are growing larger and larger, and you have a couple of down months and cash flow is tight, you need to make sure that you still have funds set aside to pay those really critical parts, because that's not your money, that's your staff's money, that's their income tax that you need to remit back to the ATO. So that's why I'm really, really strong on setting up a financial system for my clients to make sure they always have enough cash to pay those debts, to make sure they're paying their BAS, because ending up on an ATO payment plan is not ideal. And as you can see from the ASIC website, there's certain situations where you may become personally liable for a penalty equal to these amounts. So you can't just declare bankruptcy and walk away from the flaming wreck. You may be personally liable for it. So this is one real world example of why you need to understand your numbers. I don't want to scare you about it, but I just want you to think, I need to take ownership of this. I need to understand it. Even though it may be boring, there's real world implications. And at least understanding the very basics, I think will put you in really good stead, because ultimately it's your business and you're liable.